What do you do when you're ready to move to a 55 and older community, but your spouse isn't? Well, to be honest, this situation happens a lot more than people think, but it's really something that doesn't get talked about very often. So today, I want to give you an honest look at why this happens, and more importantly, what you can do about it if it does. Hi, my name is Casey, and I'm a realtor here in Southern California, and I specialize in helping people buy and sell homes in 55 and older communities like Trilogy, Glen and the community of Terramor here in Corona, California. And my wife and I actually live in one of these communities, so I've seen this situation play out not just professionally, but personally too. And I want to give you an honest take, because I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer for this one. And make sure you stick around until the end, because I think the last thing I share is something that might surprise a lot of you, but it really is one of the most important things to consider. Okay, first, let's talk about the real reasons why your spouse is resisting moving to a 55 and older community. So before we talk about any solutions, I think it's important to understand why your spouse might be hesitant to make this kind of a move. And in my experience, the reason they tell you and the real reason are often two different things. Now, your spouse might be saying things like, I don't want an HOA telling me what to do, or I'm not ready to be surrounded by nothing but old people. And while these are real concerns, I found that underneath these objections, there's usually something much deeper going on. And the most common, it's really about their identity. So think about it this way. For some people, moving to a 55 and older community makes them feel like they're actually getting old. And for a lot of people, that can be a really hard thing to come to terms with. And for these people, it makes them feel like time is passing them by. And I'll be honest with you, for the people that feel this way, it's not really about the HOA fees or the home sizes. It's about what the move means to them personally and how it makes them feel about aging. And until you understand this, it's going to be really hard to have a productive conversation with your spouse. Next, let's talk about some of the approaches that can actually backfire. And sometimes the things that people do to try to convince their spouse to move can actually make matters much worse. Because if you've been trying to convince them and it's not working, it might come down to how the conversation is being framed. And the first thing is only pointing out the positive things about 55 and older communities. But if you only share the upside, things like the amenities, the social activities, and the security, your spouse is going to feel like they're being sold to, and nobody likes this feeling. Now, a better approach is to actually acknowledge the real downsides too. Show them that you've actually thought this through honestly, that you're not just excited, you're informed. And the next thing is simply moving too fast. Now, some people start scheduling tours before their spouse is even open to the conversation, and that's going to create resistance every single time. Now, your spouse needs to feel like this is truly a shared decision and not something that's already been decided. And the last thing is trying to use logic to overcome an emotional objection. Now, I've seen this one happen a lot. One spouse has all of the numbers, the market data, the HOA fees, and the cost comparisons, and they just can't understand why their partner isn't convinced to make the move. But here's what I've learned. If the hesitation is emotionally based, logic alone isn't going to fix this one. Now, before we move on, I want to ask for a quick favor. Now, if you've liked this video so far and you'd like to see more videos about buying or selling a home as a senior, I'd love if you consider subscribing to my channel. Now, I post new videos every week, so make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Okay, next, let me show you some things that can actually help. And the first thing I recommend is getting your spouse to come out just for a visit and not a scheduled tour of a community. And there's a big difference. A tour feels like a sales pitch, and the truth is, it probably is. But if you can get your spouse to attend a community event, like a pickleball tournament, an outdoor concert in the park, or just stop into karaoke night, and just have them experience what the social life actually looks like, that can be a real game changer. Now, I've seen this happen many times. The reluctant spouse comes to an event, they start talking to residents, and it completely changes their perspective. And not because they were shown a floor plan or talked to by a real estate agent, but because they got a chance to meet real people. And hearing about life from other residents can be a huge advantage. And when I'm working with a couple where one spouse is on the fence, I really do try to connect them with a current resident who was in the exact same position before. Because hearing, I felt the same way you do right now, from someone who now loves where they live, that's so much more powerful than anything I could ever say. And it's more powerful than anything you can say too. And next, your spouse needs to have a real say in this decision. Now, this may sound simple, but it's important. Now, if your spouse feels like they have genuine input, maybe they get to pick the community, choose the floor plan, or decide on the timeline, they're going to feel much more invested in the outcome. And the goal is for this to feel like it's their decision as much as it is yours. And finally, be honest about the timing. Now this one's important too. It's much easier to make this kind of a decision when you're both healthy, active, and have the time to research your options. It gets a lot harder when a health event or a financial change forces a decision for you. So it might be worth having an honest conversation about what would need to happen for both of you to feel ready and what your timeline actually looks like. And before I wrap this up, let me share with you the hard truth on this one. And I want to be honest with you about something that most people in my position as a real estate agent probably wouldn't say. But sometimes, and despite your best efforts, you and your spouse just aren't going to be on the same page. And I've seen this happen. And pushing too hard can create tension in a relationship over what should be a positive experience. So if you're really truly stuck and you just can't come to an agreement, it might be worth taking a break and giving it some time. And maybe try revisiting the conversation in 6 months or a year. And consider having a conversation with a financial advisor about what actually makes the most sense for your situation, and not just emotionally, but financially too. Because at this stage of life, it's not just about buying a home. It's about making a decision that gives you both peace of mind and makes sense financially. And that means making it together. So if you're working through this type of situation with your spouse, I hope it gives you some things to think about. If you'd like to talk through your specific situation, I'll put my contact information up on the screen. So feel free to reach out anytime. You can call or text me, and I'd love to try to help. But I'm curious, have you ever been through this with your spouse? What helped you get on the same page? Or are you still trying to figure it out? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Now thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.